Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. No one in the room with me knows what topic we're going to talk about until they hear it. You're here with the crew of Ohm.
Gee, I'm scared. The podcast.
This is Camille.
This is Brenda.
This is Lynn.
And this is Chandra.
Today's surprise freeballing topic is trigger warnings.
Oh,
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
You've all seen it on social media. You see certain words where there's an asterisk in the word because maybe it's a bit delicate. Words like violence, murder, abuse. Are these necessary alerts, or is it hyper-coddling for the next generation? Are we too sensitive nowadays? Or are we honoring and gentle parenting each other's souls in trying times? Are we setting each other up for difficult lessons by not calling things as they are? That's the topic, trigger warnings. Does anybody have something to say about it?
holy
do.
moly. Go ahead, Chandra.
Damn.
That's what I was going to say.
Daym. Damn.
Ooh,
Yeah, I was
well,
going to say that too. So that's an interesting topic, Camille. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
You're welcome.
You know, I wonder if some of the newer generation of people with, you know, those trigger words. Oh,
Thanks,
that
Cooper.
That was Cooper.
Shake it off.
He's shaking it off. If this is where we're evolving as a society, because maybe those things in the far future are not going to be words that we're ever going to have to deal with again.
I like that aspect.
Speak that.
Mm,
I don't know.
I received that.
Yeah.
yeah.
If we could, maybe it's when we pass back into spirit. Who knows if we're capable as human beings to live in a world without abuse or harm or
Murder
narcissism
or killing. Yeah.
Well, I think we have to have all that for balance.
or control.
Control. Mhm.
Control is a big trigger word for me.
And I say balance, but you can't know love without hate.
Right.
Right.
You can't know
If every room that you walked
dark
into,
without light.
right. If every room that you walked into had the lights on, you'd never know
Mhm.
the sensation of the light coming on.
But do we think that is just the human existence? Like
yeah.
if we go into spirit and everything is oneness,
Mm-hmm. We don't need it in spirit.
Right.
but why do we need it here?
You know what made me think of this topic and want to spring it on my witches here?
Growth. Okay, go ahead.
We all get our algorithm. We've talked about this in past episodes. But sometimes I'll be scrolling and I will see something before a story that says warning or trigger warning. Domestic abuse, trigger warning. Alcoholism, trigger warning.
Suicide.
Cigarettes, drugs, suicide, anything. And this is the part of me that kind of tips the hat to my grandparents and great-grandparents who used to say, man, kids these days, they are just too weak. They're a bunch of pansies.
Yeah.
We went through some stuff. Why do we have to put
3 miles to school in the snow, uphill both
Yes.
ways.
Why do we have to put words that we all need, words that are real, under a special kind of gentle, fluffy wrap to make it palatable or to make it discussable? And that's what I want everyone's opinions on, because I don't want to be the old curmudgeon who's sitting there judging. I want everyone to feel safe and have a forum to discuss. But wrapping it in a fluffy cloud, is it necessary?
I don't know, because, you know, I mean, say our grandparents went through some really difficult times,
Oh, yes.
like the Great Depression and wars, and they never got help.
Right.
Like they never had talk therapy or therapy of any kind. You just dealt with it and you moved on.
Yeah.
But is that really the best way to deal with it? Are we evolving by being aware of it and actually working on these things now? Because I sat with my daughter and her friends yesterday. My friend had a little cookie decorating party for them, and they just talk, as girls do,
Mm-hmm.
teenage girls.
Regardless of age.
Right. But their vocabulary is so much more advanced than mine was at that age to talk about like mental health issues or narcissistic behavior or just awareness of themselves and the people around them and talking about therapy and all these different disorders. And I'm like, we never talked about anything like that whenever I was growing up. My friend group never talked about anything like that.
Right.
Now we're talking about it as
Yeah.
50-year-old ladies. But are they going to be so much further ahead of the curve of healing
Mm-hmm.
than we are? Like we're doing in our 50s now, 40s, 50s. You know,
Well,
who's
and
counting?
That, not me. But that was my first inclination, was that there's so many more of us doing the inner work and the deep work and the dark work and looking at our own trauma now and are aware of what it brings up for us, that it's kind of like just a sensitivity to the fact of if when this thought occurs to me in my own head, I know how it makes me feel. I don't want to be the thing that makes someone else feel that way necessarily. So therefore, quote unquote, trigger warning.
Right. Tread lightly.
Right.
If you know it's a sore spot.
If
I
this
think
is-
that's human dignity.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So my first inclination was not that anybody needs coddling or anybody is getting soft or whatever in any particular way, but it's just like, this is special for me. And it creates certain feelings when I do this work on myself. So before I share and hopefully help someone else, I don't want to take you off guard and create that feeling unnecessarily in you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it's a new awareness
Yes.
that our grandparents didn't have. My parents probably didn't have. Maybe are coming into that a little bit more.
It's not that I think you're soft. It's just that I don't want to blindside you with
Right.
the feeling that I just had when this occurred to me.
But our grandparents may have never had that awareness that they had any feeling about it.
True.
So it's like now we're becoming more aware.
Disassociated. It's not even the thought. It's just I don't even have awareness of the feeling that the thought creates because I'm so far removed. I've so far removed myself from that.
Right. And they never would talk about it. Like my grandfather was in the war and he had some
Right.
nerves. He had the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never talked about exactly what he was feeling. And he never talked to anybody else, as far as I know, about what he was feeling. So I just think we're coming into a different age of awareness so that we can maybe evolve and be kinder to each other, even though it looks like we're descending into not caring about each other's feelings. I don't know.
I mean, devil's advocate standpoint here,
Yeah.
and this is exactly why I wanted to talk about this, because I want someone to challenge my natural inclinations, which are, okay, so now we're into censorship. Okay, so now we're into coddling people. We're into whitewashing things and pretending things never happened. But I also can absolutely see the points that you guys are making. And that's why I wanted to throw this meat into the arena and see what we chew on.
Chew, somebody chew.
Mhm.
It's a very interesting subject for sure. I'm just like listening to everybody talk and trying to get my thoughts because sometimes I'm not good on the fly because I need my filter because sometimes I say stuff, that
No,
probably. You believe it, Cam?
that's why I love you, Boo.
We didn't have any coddling growing up, and not in my household. And there was no trigger warning. There was no anything. But it did make me, as I'm looking at it, it made me, I want to say it made me tough as nails, but also
Resilient.
it made me resilient. But on the flip side,
Outside.
on the other side of it, it made me have to learn to compartmentalize.
Okay.
And internalize that hurt. And where do you put it?
Internalize it and put it in its own little box and wrap it with a big, pretty bow so that it doesn't look ugly to me.
Keeping the peace.
Yeah. And so I think evolving into now where I think we should still be able to have conversations, but I think saying up front, listen, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about XYZ. So if you're uncomfortable, take a breath. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think we should
Baptism by fire.
right.
Well, and at least we're having the conversations now.
Right.
At least we're talking the things out loud.
Yes. And I think we should continue those conversations. But like Cam said, I don't think baptizing by fire is sometimes not the best way to do things. Maybe for me it is because, Aries sextuplet. But yeah, I think we need those conversations.
And there were no conversations.
And there were no conversations. Oh God, no! You couldn't ask any questions at my house.
I'm going to challenge that.
Okay.
No, I'm going to challenge it with an agreement. There were no conversations, but there were statements.
That's true.
100%.
That's true.
There were.
It was my daddy's way or the highway.
Yeah.
Well, and there was no conversation about body positivity or self-acceptance, but there was, oh, looks like you've been eating healthy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you were expected to leave it at that.
Yeah.
And that was the conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where at least now we're saying, okay, trigger warning. Because we now understand how hurtful that comment was. And so before we start talking about someone made that comment, we want to put it out there that this is going to be that conversation. There were conversations,
Yeah.
there were
But it was
where you weren't expected to respond.
right. And it was a lack of sensitivity and awareness
Yes.
even. And I got a funny story for y'all.
Yes.
So my mother, the last time I went to see her, I love her. Like, I do feel like she's trying to grow. And we had a conversation and it was something about somebody's weight. And she was like, you'll see I didn't mention their weight or something like that. And I was like, she remembers me telling her, like, why you always got to be bringing up the way I look? So, she took note of that.
Yeah, she's like, you notice I didn't mention their weight, although I'm mentioning it right now.
Well, but she wanted to make a point that she had listened to me.
Well,
Right.
Yeah.
That I took a note. I
Yeah.
did like accept me. I did take a note.
And that was growth.
That's
I mean,
love
It
in a
is-
way.
Yeah,
It
and
is.
That is love.
growth. It
Yeah.
is growth when they can listen to you and say,
Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said
maybe
it
I
that way.
shouldn't talk about your weight.
Yeah. Or anybody else.
Or anybody else's. You can
whatever.
talk about yours if you want to, but
Yeah.
don't talk about mine.
Right.
Please
Yeah.
don't.
So that's interesting. Like,
For the love of God.
The love of all that's holy.
the conversations that were never had.
Yeah.
And now it could be a conversation because, like we've talked about before, if you don't call it out, anything in life,
Mm-hmm.
then it's never going to be talked about.
Yeah.
And at least you can open the door to a conversation.
And you're never going to give anybody else the opportunity to bring about the other side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was like looking at in my mind. My dad would tell us something,
Mm-hmm.
and that was how it was.
That's how it was in my household, especially
And-
with the religion.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
especially with the religion. And I have a whole lot of religious triggers. So if y'all ever going to talk to me about religion, please
Say
use
trigger warning.
Please put the caveat at the beginning, trigger warning, but more for yourself than for me because y'all just going to be stunned at what I have to say when that comes out.
I love it when a topic comes full circle.
I mean, I do have some triggers,
I think we all do. And I'm going to kind of riff off something Brenda said a little bit earlier about her grandfather. My own grandfather, who was kind of an arsehole, emotionally abusive, and did his own thing. And he got lots of space in the house. He got the dinners he wanted. He got things like he liked them without much challenging, yada, yada. We did not know until after he had died in his late 80s, and we found going through some papers. He was in 3 world wars in the Navy, okay? World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. He was a chief petty officer. He was on a ship that was bombed, and all of the sailors had to wade in the water to be rescued. He never once talked about it. We know he saw some stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff.
He was stationed overseas. But he was a stoic man who, by the way, ran away to join the Navy at age 15, which you could do back then.
And also, there's probably some family trauma there. Just
You
saying.
better believe
Yeah.
it. You better believe it. His mother was a tough nut who told her kids, well, your daddy left because he doesn't love us anymore, so we're just going to move ahead. And not long after that, he ran away to join the Navy. So Pop, as I knew him, was a domineering asshole,
Mhm.
period. But after he died and I got to see all the secrets that never came out of his mouth, I have so much more
Or-
empathy for that. And my gosh, the man he could have been
Mhm.
if he had been able to speak that truth. But instead, he passed his stoic, suck it up, therapy is for wussies attitude down to my uncle, and so on and so on and so on. So I think that is probably the case for many of our families.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure.
They
That
don't know what
unhealed
to do with the
trauma.
triggers. Yeah. They get triggers and don't know how to deal with them. They just put them down. Just
Right.
bury them a little deeper.
Or they just act like assholes.
Or
Yeah.
Well, but to your point, they act like assholes, and then you get like a less than 10 word glimpse
Mhm.
into their reality. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
there's one memory I have of my grandfather. We had this old, almost like Victorian desk. It was like, I guess it was like a drop leaf. It had like the angled lid that flipped down into the desk top.
Mm-hmm.
And almost like a secretary, but it was shorter it wasn't as tall and narrow. It was more wide and based in a secretary. We were going through that, and this was before he passed away. And there was a sword in there, but ended up being a bayonet, is what it was. And we pulled that out, and he looked at it, and he made one comment. It was less than 10 words. I'll remember every word of it, and I'll remember it till I die. He looked at it, he made those 7 or 8 words, however many it was, turned around, walked out of the room, and I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea.
He felt something
Yes.
to you at that moment.
Yes. I
He
had no
felt.
idea he was capable of that,
Right.
or that he even had memories. Like, I had seen his World War II uniform thousands of times. He even had like certain things, buttons off of his thing. We had it framed and against like one of his photos of him in uniform. I guess it was like he was too old for it to have been when he like graduated into the Army. Would have had to have been like when he came home from war, because he was older. But anyway, against a picture of him in his uniforms. And I had no idea he had emotions like that
Right.
about that time in his life. And I'm like, oh, so like, it was almost like a door open, and it was like makes so much more sense now.
Those flashes of empathy are important.
Mhm.
We didn't grow up in that body with that attitude, with
Mm-mm.
that
Right.
trauma.
And we didn't know they were capable of it until you see that one little flash,
Mhm.
and it changes how you perceive that person totally.
Yeah.
right.
And I mean, seeing that was a trigger.
Mhm.
Seeing that item is what triggered.
But he recovered in a flash, did he not?
He did.
That's what men did.
He walked out of that room, and it was never spoken of again.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure somebody saw the look on his face.
I was only
You
one.
saw.
I did.
Oh.
It was just me and him in the room.
And women of an older generation certainly have different kinds of triggers. I don't
Yeah.
even need to explain that to y'all.
Yeah.
Where you go through some heinous stuff and you suck it up and you go on to be the wife and the mother and the organizer. And
Mm-hmm.
so back to, do we tread lightly or do we get it out in the open and do away with it?
I think we got to get it
Both.
out in the open, but with kindness.
But
Right.
I think
Different approach.
yeah.
but I think the kindness of going, okay, this could trigger some people, but I'm still going to say it because it needs to be said and people need to hear it, and there's somebody out there that's going to resonate with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So I think that's both.
our group has had to have difficult conversations that could
Yeah.
be very painful to have for all of us, but we still have them because we care about each other. And
We have a safe space here.
yeah,
That's a privilege.
yeah,
Totally.
true.
Yeah.
So I got a question for all of y'all.
Yeah.
What's your biggest trigger?
Oh, dear God.
Good
Religion.
jobs. Oh, okay.
It is mine. Religion's my biggest trauma. It's my biggest trigger.
Disrespect. That's my biggest trigger.
Yeah.
Politics and religion, which disrespect is a huge factor between both.
Right.
Yeah.
Rejection,
Mm.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that is a
rejection and abandonment.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
yeah. See, if I feel that, I just reject and abandon them back.
Right back. Girl, that's my lid friend right there.
Y'all need to hug it out, make out, what?
We might make out later.
I mean, you never know. You seem like
Send some pictures
Yeah.
of that Christmas present. We might do that.
Yeah, religion, man. Just somebody can say something, and I'm doing much better since I met Brenda Sue because I've learned how not to pop off.
Oh,
Which is a good thing. Like, I've watched Brenda. It's a growth. We've had this conversation. Brenda will pop off on you if you ain't careful.
Right.
But Brenda has also learned.
Brenda knows the art of doing it thoughtfully.
Exactly.
Tact and diplomacy
Yes.
are
She can
learned.
pop. She
They're
can
not
pop
born
off,
into
but
you.
she does
Absolutely.
it. She does it very thoughtfully.
Exactly. But the first time I seen her pop, she popped, y'all. She pop, fizz. Oh, what a relief it was
For her.
Yes, for her. But immediately after, Brenda said, I probably should have thought about that and not popped. And so the next time that something came up, Brenda was very thoughtful. So I've learned from Brenda
Mhm.
that popping not always the best way to go. And so if somebody says something about religion to me, I might take a moment now. But
That's the epitome of growth.
it is the
What you
epitome of
just
growth.
described
Mhm.
about Brenda and how it has transferred to you,
Yeah.
that is the epitome of growth. And what are we here for if not for that?
Yeah.
I thought Lynn was going to pop off at the hairdressers yesterday morning whenever I got that text.
Oh, I did almost pop. And that
I
was about religion.
Tell us about
so-
that trigger.
I am so surprised you didn't. I was like, we're going to get a text later when she popped off.
I thought I was going to have to call and ask for bail money. So I
you
was
call
sitting,
this bitch.
I'll call you. Text you or something. So I was sitting in the salon yesterday.
Everybody in here's got Venmo. That's all you need to know.
That's right.
Somebody's got to come down there. though.
Somebody can handle it.
So I was sitting in the salon and I was, getting my hair did. And there was this younger girl in there with her mother. And her mother was actually letting her have her hair done in 4 different shades of purple, which was gorgeous, by the way.
Progressive, like how progressive?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And she was probably, I think she said she was 16. So her mom letting her have it done, I thought, oh, that's really nice. My mom would have never let me have my hair colored at 16, especially purple. But when the girl showed her the versions of purple, the mom spoke up and said that bright purple needs to go underneath all of the hair. And so the hairdresser was like, oh, why do you want it underneath? Does she wear her hair up a lot so you'll be able to see the beautiful purple? And her mom said, no, we just don't want the people at church to be able to see that well. And y'all, I almost lost my mind.
That lion roared in your heart, didn't it,
did.
darling?
It did. I sat up on the edge of that chair and I was like, oh, no, hush. It's not your business. So what?
Let me send a message to my friends.
So what does one do but pick their phone up and text their crew and be like, y'all are not going to believe this. This woman in here.
I can't say this out loud, but I'm gonna say it to y'all.
Right?
This woman is in here telling her child, we don't let them see that because they'll judge you.
Judge me
And
is
I
what
was,
she meant.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Exactly. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I was like, Spirit, why? Why do you put these people in here with me? Are you just testing me to see if I can keep my mouth shut? And there was something else that happened after that.
Yeah, the
What
boyfriend.
the boyfriend. Yes. Okay. So I let that go. I sit back and relax. And I thought, I'm just going to sit here with my tinfoil hats on. Because
This will not affect my hairdo experience.
Exactly, man. I got my tinfoil on. I'm not going to get any of that. So I sat back in my chair with my tinfoil, and then they start talking about the girl's boyfriend, and the mother says, oh, well, he's Catholic, and we're going to have to convert him. And I thought, oh, where's the cork? Where's the cork? Somebody needs to stick it in my mouth right now. And about that time, the man that does my hair said, oh, come on, we're ready. And I said, thank God.
He's like, not a moment too soon.
And-
Rinse this away from my soul.
So he did put me in the chair and start rinsing me. And I was chewing on my lip. And he must have noticed because he gave me a pretty good hair wash. And then I got
He's like, well, we just need to sit here for another 5 minutes.
You need to relax. Honey.
Yeah.
You need to relax.
So I get in the chair and he's combing it out. And I just look at him in the mirror and he's looking at me. And I said, oh my God, how do you stand that? I was like, does this happen all the time? Oh my God, why is she trying to control that?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, she's like that. She comes in here a lot and that happens a lot. And I
That poor
said,
child.
I said, somebody needs to tell that child. And he was like, not you.
Your guardian angel.
And I was like,
That's a subtle man right there.
Miguel at the hair salon is your guardian angel.
I was like, all right. I was like, hurry up, just get this done, get it dried. Please put the dryer in my ear so I can no longer hear any of their
Right.
conversation. Because how horrible is it that you're teaching your 16-year-old daughter that? Like, people are going to judge you, so let's put that
Well,
underneath.
right.
And the red flag to your own self that I know I already am expecting the judgment. I'm
Yeah.
accepting that the judgment is okay or acceptable in some way. Like, that's not a red
She's-
flag that you already know these people are going to judge you that
Yeah,
way.
she's already putting the expectation that she's going to be judged for
Right.
being different.
And anybody that she brings into her field, whether it's a boyfriend or a friend, she's going to try to convert them and change them.
Because that child is reflective of that family.
That's
And
right.
that has been driven in.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. And I was like, please get me out of this salon.
Well, and
Because trigger.
trigger. But regardless of whether it was the topic was religion or not, you're not taking the opportunity to teach that child that, okay, there are differences. You've got a teachable opportunity here, and you're not using it to its potential. You're like reinforcing this thing of differences are
Bad.
bad.
Mhm.
Instead of being Christ-like.
Yeah.
Right.
Your purple hair is
But
gorgeous.
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like you've taken religion even out of the whole equation is like, you're not teaching her how to deal with those things. You're teaching her that those things are expected and it's her responsibility to mitigate them.
Right. And if you read anything about like Mother Mary, like if you've seen the like stories they do about her on the Instagrams and whatnot, her fingers were probably painted red
Mm-hmm.
because of the culture. And they try to portray her as like this, like very white, washed, soft,
Innocent vessel.
Yes. And that is not what she
Well,
would
but-
look like or act like.
That's what religion did.
Well, but
Yeah.
just because you haven't had sex doesn't make you innocent. Totally.
Nope.
I mean, I'm not talking about Mother Mary in specific.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's not the epitome of innocence.
You can see a lot of worldly things before
Right.
Well,
ever
and-
doing that.
right.
And, you know, I don't necessarily believe in the Immaculate Conception, but, you know, that's
Right.
just me.
That's some bullshit right there.
I think that they just said, oh, she would never do that. And I was like, yes, she did.
And you know, one of the
That's
things
how you get pregnant.
one of the things that made me choose this topic, recently I went to see the movie Wicked, highly recommend. And you know how they go through the previews of different movies? Well, after every preview, they show what the rating is and why the rating is. This is rated PG because there's going to be smoking in it. There's going to be drug use. There's going to be cursing. There's going to be violence. They're getting down like to the fine print of what is in these movies. And that was like, if it's PG, I'm going to take some of that for granted.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like we are so hyper aware. And I thought, yeah, I need to talk about this with my witches. And outstanding points. I got to say, thank you guys.
I think it was a great subject.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. You got anything to add? People of the interwebs who are listening, please comment. I'd love to hear what you think about trigger warnings.
Same.
Yeah. So we love you guys. Take good care of yourselves.
Go forth and conquer 2025.
Yes. See you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.